everyone, and welcome to the Woke Summit. I'm so grateful you made this decision to join us and give yourself the gift of these incredible individuals who are here to share their time with you, to share their energy with you, to share the ideas and their stories and their passion and purpose and things they've been working on in their life. They are here to help you awaken more in your own life. I'm Sue Urda. I'm your host for this event and the publisher of Powerful You Publishing, and I am just really totally honored to share these people with you. And today I'm really happy to be sharing this time with Linda Feliciano. She is one of the co-authors of the book that will soon be released on February 20th. The book is titled Woke, and Linda's going to talk today with you about the joy of healing, harnessing the power of your emotions to live a more fulfilling life. And I know that's part of the reason that you're all here, and you love this topic too. So I'm going to read a brief introduction of Linda, and then we'll get started speaking with her. Linda Feliciano is an evolutionary coach and a trauma and energy healer who is passionate about helping others live more fulfilled and joyful lives. Linda is a certified practitioner of Soul Realignment, Arch Energy Healing, and Teal Swan's completion process, which she uses to assist her clients discover their soul gifts, heal subconscious patterns that are not serving them, and create lives in alignment with their deepest desires. She teaches the basics of meditation at organizations in the Boston area and serves clients everywhere. Linda provides all of her services in English and Spanish and is committed to making spirituality and self-development more accessible to the Hispanic community. And Linda, I really am so happy to talk with you today. How are you?
I'm great, Sue. Thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
Me too. And I do love your topic, the joy of healing. And I especially like that because often I think when people think of healing, they think it's a tough kind of thing to do. It's a hard process. There's angst and all that kind of stuff. So I'm happy to hear your take on how we can have joy in our healing process. But if we can start first, if you could tell us why you do this work you do. Why do you have such a passion for helping others around this issue? I'll start that again. If you can tell us why you have such a passion for helping others around this issue of healing.
Yes, thank you. Well, I think to your point earlier, I think it's because most of us are in a constant state of pain and disconnection. And honestly, some of us don't even know any different, and I actually was one of those people. I mean, I lived the majority of my life believing that that's all there was to life. You know, pain sprinkled with a little bit of, a handful of moments of happiness and maybe fun, and then circling right back to pain. And most of that was because I had never seen anything different. So finding out that it doesn't have to be that way was honestly a revelation to me. So it was a real huge weight lifted off my shoulders, and I think that that's going to be the same for others. You know, the idea that learning that you can live a life that is joyful and fulfilling was not something that I had even considered 10 years ago. And one thing I want to add, you know, to be clear, I do not believe that healing means that we are broken or that we need to be fixed. What I do believe is that we are here to learn and experience and grow. And to me, that is really what healing is all about. It is about experiencing ourselves and this life and growing and expanding with it and really finding the joy in it all. So that's why I'm so passionate about helping others heal.
I love that because so often we teach what we have learned, you know, in our own lives. And so I love that you've done that. So let's talk about that, what you just said about growth. Are there any misconceptions or myths people have about growth?
Yeah, I think there's quite a few, but one of the most common and I think probably the most important misconception that I found around growth is this idea that growth is linear. For some reason, most of us have this belief or this perception that growth is a consistent upward and forward motion. And I'm not really sure where that comes from. I'm not sure if it is because we live in a society that mostly focuses on material success and competition, or maybe is because we are really so focused on polarity. But the truth is that from what I've seen, that is a very limited and inaccurate definition of what growth is. The truth for me is that sometimes while we're growing, we need to stop. We need to make a pause to allow ourselves time to rest, integrate what we've learned, put it into practice, etc. And then there's other times where we just need to stop and take a step backwards, actually, to propel us forward. I recently did a video on this very subject for my YouTube channel, and even since then, I've had some reframing around the subject as well, because I think I realized that sometimes going backwards is necessary to heal something that is still unresolved and impacting our choices in the current state or at this current time. And what I think is important for people to understand is that having that clarity, understanding that you need to stop and take a step back in order to leap forward and expand, that is the very definition of growth. It really just happens to be in a direction that our current framework does not identify as growth, but it is.
That's interesting. So when I think of growth, and I think about our current, societal definitions of things like that, like you said, I think it's linear. I think everybody would like to just think you go right up the ladder without stepping back or falling off or anything like that. Is there something, if you're stepping back, how do we not consider that a failure then if we have to go back and maybe redo something or look at it differently and learn it again?
Well, I think that the idea of taking a step back is never a failure. I call it more like fine-tuning. So, for example, you may have a situation where you have a particular pattern in your life that may not be very healthy, that you've outgrown, or maybe that you've actually resolved, right? And a few years down the road, you find yourself in another situation where a little bit of that pattern is coming back. All that's doing is pointing you to the fact that you still need to do some more fine-tuning, that there may be something else that you didn't notice before. And sometimes it's just about reinforcing the learning. It's sort of similar to when a child learns to read, right? You learn the letters, and then you start putting together words, and then you start stringing sentences. You don't actually go from 0 to 100 in one step. And it's the same for growth. Sometimes you learn something, but you need to reinforce that learning along your lifetime. And that is why I don't view it as taking a step back or as a failure. It's just basically reinforcing the learning that you already have and expanding it and applying it to other areas of your life.
Love it. Okay. Yeah, expanding that learning and reinforcing is perfect. So, Linda, I'm thinking there are people on the call who are wanting to maybe start a healing journey. Maybe they've done some, but they might want to start it. Can you share with us the first step in healing and tell us why it's so important to start there?
Yeah, I think for me, I believe that the first step for any sort of healing or growth practice is really awareness. Really honestly getting to know yourself. And by that, I don't mean getting to know your personality. I mean really start to dive deep into your motivations, your desires, your fears, etc. And we can do that in a lot of different ways. And one of the ways that I think is really helpful is to start noticing how you perceive the world around you and ask yourself questions about those perceptions. So, for example, when you're triggered by something, you can ask, why did I react that way? Was I truly angry, or was there something else beneath that feeling? What do I believe that person's actions meant? Why do I believe that? Right? And ask yourself those kinds of questions, because we all think we know ourselves, but often what we know are only some aspects of who we are. And even then, in a lot of cases, those are colored by a lot of our coping mechanisms that we use to survive. And most of that happens, because throughout our lives, we learn to suppress and repress other aspects of us because they were either rejected or deemed unacceptable by others. And our coping mechanism is to bury them deep, but they're still there. And they are subconsciously driving our motivations and our behavior. And those are some of the parts that we really need to know. The answers, to me, are always within us, because how we see the world and our reactions to it are almost always based on our own experiences, our own beliefs, and our own wounds. And that's where triggers come from. that's where our triggers come from, excuse me. So that's why I believe that getting to know yourself and that level of awareness is the first step of any healing journey.
Okay, that's great. Triggers, that's a word, for me, I didn't even know that word until like 10 years ago. I thought of a trigger as something on a gun, but then people started talking about triggers, and I noticed that I have lots of my own triggers, and I know what they are now because as you said, that first step is awareness, like pay attention to what I'm thinking and how I'm perceiving things. So triggers are very interesting for me, and I know them now, so I know how to catch them and work with them. Will you tell us and our audience why it's so important to work with and resolve these triggers in our life?
Sure, and you're right. I mean, the word triggers has become another popular word nowadays, and I think the best way for me to answer the question is if I first try to frame the answer by giving you what my definition of a trigger is. And to me, a trigger is a physical, psychological, and or emotional reaction of distress in response to some form of stimuli. And it is generally a result of re-experiencing unresolved trauma. I think what happens is that especially nowadays, triggers have a very negative connotation in our society. I think mostly because they're usually associated with, negative emotions, or what we consider quote unquote negative emotions. And I agree, they don't always feel great. I mean, nobody wants to get triggered, right? But we blame triggers for creating those quote-unquote negative emotions within us. However, I don't believe there is such a thing as a negative emotion. I mean, emotions are just a physical expression of our internal process, and they can provide a lot of information. So if we look at triggers and emotions from that higher perspective, we may be able to see them more as a gift. They're sort of, I would equate them to a yellow traffic light. It's just telling you to slow down, right? But if you rush past it every time, eventually you're going to get pulled over. So what I feel is best in order to harness the power of those triggers is to instead pause and work on understanding what they're trying to tell you, because they're always pointing to something important, something you need to see, something you need to acknowledge, understand, and maybe heal. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions around triggers, and another one that I found is that people also believe that triggers can only point to a wound. And sometimes that trigger, that reaction that you have, can also point to a very deep desire within you that is still unknown to you. So no, I don't think triggers are not always pretty or easy or even wanted. But to answer your question more directly, I think unraveling triggers is important because otherwise we will be living our lives from a reactive place. And I believe that all that we want instead is a life that flows, that is in alignment with our soul's purpose, our essence. And to me, I would describe triggers as the emotional highway that can get you there.
I love that. Yep, use them instead of stuff them, I guess.
Right.
That's awesome. Love it. So now let me ask you one of these, what I'll call a bigger existential question. Linda, do you think that we have all come here with some sort of purpose or a mission?
Well, I would answer that question by saying yes and no, and I'll explain why. So I think, yes, we do all have a purpose. But the reason I say no is because I don't believe we have a purpose in the traditional sense of the word. I think a lot of us, especially in this field of, healing and self-development, self-help, etc., spend a lot of time trying to figure out what our purpose is. And to me, purpose doesn't have to be this big responsibility or burden or something that we must do so that our lives have some form of meaning or so that we can save the world. My very personal belief is that the only purpose for us is to fully experience being human and through that experience find our joy. And I think what I found is that the more joyful you are, the more others are drawn to you because they want to feel how you feel, right? They want to have what they see you having. So then service becomes a byproduct of who you are because others are influenced and motivated by your very essence. So you are then helping to heal and raise the vibration of those around you and of the universe as a whole.
I love that. That makes so much sense. Now, let me ask you this. So we come here, we do have a purpose of some kind or a mission. Do you think that that can change throughout our lives?
I think it can. I think it is very flexible. I think it can for some people, and I would, I would probably even differentiate a little bit between purpose and mission, because I think I see purpose more as a bigger umbrella, and the mission can change, right? So in my personal belief, your purpose is to be, fully human and find your joy. And under that umbrella, there's a lot of different ways that you can do that and that you can experience that. And that mission can change. It could be you may decide to do healing work, for example, like some of us do. You may decide to travel the world and get to know people. And that is something that may bring you joy, but at the same time, you're connecting with other human beings. So I do believe that mission, throughout the course of your life, your mission can change.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've actually experienced that, and I appreciate that you explaining that for us, because I think a lot of people kind of get stuck on one thing. So I think that's wonderful information. And Linda, I know in the work that you do, you have created a wonderful program called Healing and Fulfillment. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. So this is an mostly online program that I developed, and I created it with the intent of helping people discover their soul gifts and to help people get to know themselves by tapping into the subconscious patterns and strategies that can oftentimes hinder their growth and their ability to live the life of abundance that they want. Similar to what we were talking about earlier, that idea of uncovering what your unconscious patterns and desires are. And I think the reason for me creating this is that I believe that armed with that knowledge, I can help people gain some clarity about themselves and also help them develop tools and skills that are necessary so they can really take ownership of their own journey and live a fulfilling life that is in alignment with their soul. And the way that I do this program is I use a variety of modalities through the process, including one-on-one session work. But I also provide a lot of other services that listeners may be interested in, but this program is mostly with the purpose that I described.
Awesome. I love that. It sounds terrific. So, Linda, I enjoyed our time together. This has been great, and I know there are people out there who might want to reach out to you, contact you, take your program, do your coaching with you. Where can we find you online?
The best way to reach me is through my website, which is lunahealingcrystals.com/woke. And that page in particular has a short webcast talking about my program. And then from there, you can navigate to my website to learn more about my services, a little bit more about me. And you can also reach out to me directly through my contact page. And I also wanted to mention that all my services are also provided in Spanish for any listeners who have family or friends that do not speak English.
Beautiful. I love it. Well, Linda, this has been great. I loved our time together. I love you talking about healing, giving us that basic first step of becoming more aware of ourselves and how we are showing up in the world, how we're thinking about the world, and it's been awesome. And I'm so grateful that you shared your story in our book, Woke. And I know that the listeners who are listening right now and they're buying this book, they'll want to read your story. So thank you so much for being a part of this whole project.
Thank you so much, Sue, for your time, and thank you to all the listeners. And I really hope that you're as excited as I am about this book, and I hope you really find it very helpful and inspiring.
Me too. Me too. And listeners, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking part in this summit. And thank you for showing up in the world as you are, full of love, being awoke and alive and aware of what's going on in your own life and wanting to help more in this world, be of service, as Linda had said earlier. So thank you all for what you're doing. Be sure to buy that book, Woke, on launch day, February 20th. If you go to our website, woke-book.com, you'll be able to find all the details there to take you to Amazon to buy that book. And thank you so much. Have a beautiful, wonderful day, everybody. Bye for now.